Across the world's rivers and coastlines, there is a creature that seems to embody pure joy. This is the otter, a sleek and playful mammal that has captured the hearts of people everywhere. We watch them as they glide through the water with effortless grace, their bodies perfectly designed for an aquatic life. They chase each other in games of tag, slide down muddy banks just for fun, and hold hands while they float on their backs. It is this wonderful, almost childlike spirit that makes us smile. Their whiskered faces and curious dark eyes seem to look right at us, inviting us into their world of endless play and simple pleasures. Otters are more than just charming animals, they are a vital part of their environment. As skilled hunters, they help to keep the populations of fish and other small creatures in balance. When you see otters in a river, it is often a sign that the water is clean and the ecosystem is healthy. They are like little guardians of our waterways, working quietly to maintain the delicate web of life. For centuries, they have been a familiar sight, from the cold seas of the north to the warm rivers of the tropics. We thought we knew them well, these delightful river dancers, who bring so much life and energy to the water's edge. Their family life is also something quite special to observe. Otters are incredibly social animals, often living in family groups called rafts or romps. The mother otter is a devoted parent, teaching her young pups how to swim, hunt, and navigate their watery world. She carries them on her belly as she floats, keeping them safe and warm until they are strong enough to venture out on their own. This strong sense of family and community is another reason why we feel such a connection to them. They remind us of the importance of looking after one another and sharing our lives with those we love. For so long we have watched and admired these creatures, particularly the neotropical otter, which lives throughout Central and South America. We saw them as one single widespread family, a single species adapting to many different homes. From the mangroves of Mexico to the cold streams of Tierra del Fuego, we believe they were all part of the same story. But nature, as it so often does, held a secret. It was a secret hidden not in plain sight, but deep within the very building blocks of life itself, waiting patiently for us to find it. And its discovery would change our understanding of these beloved animals forever. For many years, scientists who study animals, known as zoologists, believed there was only one species of neotropical otter. They saw small differences in size and color across the vast continent of Latin America, but they thought these were just local variations. An otter in Mexico might look a little different from an otter in Brazil, but they were considered members of the same extended family. This idea was written in textbooks, shown on nature maps, and accepted by conservation groups around the world. It was the simple, established truth about these wonderful creatures. No one had a strong reason to think otherwise, until a new kind of exploration began. This new exploration did not involve tracking otters through the jungle with binoculars. Instead, it happened inside a laboratory. A team of dedicated scientists decided to look more closely at the otters using a powerful tool, genetics. They collected small, harmless samples from otters in different parts of Latin America. These samples could be a tiny piece of skin or a strand of fur. From these samples, they could read the otter's DNA. DNA is like a secret instruction book found inside every living thing. It holds all the information about what that creature is, how it is built, and who its relatives are. As the scientists began to compare the DNA from different otters, they noticed something extraordinary. The instruction books did not all match. In fact, they saw a very clear and very deep division. The DNA from otters living on one side of the continent was consistently different from the DNA of otters on the other side. It was not just a small difference, like having a different eye color. The difference was so large that it was like comparing the instruction books for two completely separate types of animals. The evidence was undeniable and pointed to a startling conclusion. The team checked their results again and again, but the answer was always the same. They were not looking at one species of neotropical otter, they were looking at two. For all this time, a second, distinct species had been living right under our noses, mistaken for its well-known cousin. It was a moment of pure scientific discovery, a surprise hidden in the genetic code. The single, sprawling family of neotropical otters was actually two separate families, each with its own unique identity and history. The story of the Latin American otter had just become twice as interesting. With this incredible discovery, the map of the otter world had to be redrawn. We now know there are two distinct species living across Latin America. The first is the one we have always known, the neotropical otter, whose scientific name is Lontra longicaudis. This species has a vast range, stretching from the warm lands of Mexico all the way down through Central America and into the northern and eastern parts of South America. They are the otters you might find in the Great Amazon Basin, the wetlands of Brazil's Pantanal, or the coastal rivers that flow into the Atlantic Ocean. They are truly widespread and adaptable. The second species, the newly recognized one, has been given its own name, the Pacific otter, or Lontra annectens. This name hints at its home. These otters are found on the other side of the continent, along the narrow strip of land that faces the Pacific Ocean. Their territory runs from southern Mexico down through countries like Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, reaching the southern tip of Chile. While their cousins enjoy the wide open spaces of the Amazon, the Pacific otters live in a world defined by the coast and the rivers that rush down from the mountains to meet the ocean. Their world is long and thin, pressed between the sea and the Great Mountains. So we have two otter families living as neighbors, but separated by one of the world's most formidable natural barriers. On one side, Lontra longicaudis thrives in the vast interconnected river systems that flow towards the Atlantic. They have a huge area to roam, with countless streams and lakes to call home. Their world is one of immense wetlands and sprawling rainforests. This wide distribution is perhaps why we thought they were the only species for so long. They were simply the ones we encountered most often in the largest habitats on the continent. On the other side, Lontra annectens lives a more constrained existence. Their rivers are often shorter and steeper, tumbling down from the western slopes of the mountains directly into the Pacific. Their habitat is a long linear corridor, not a vast open network like the Amazon. This geographic separation is key to understanding why they are different species. For thousands upon thousands of years, they have lived parallel lives, evolving on their own separate paths. The discovery gives us a much clearer picture of the diversity of life on this incredible continent, showing how even familiar animals can hold surprises. To understand why these two otter species exist, we must look to the towering peaks of the Andes Mountains. This immense mountain range is not just a line on a map, it is a colossal wall of rock and ice that runs down the entire western coast of South America like a spine. It is one of the longest and highest mountain ranges in the world. For small river-dwelling animals like otters, these mountains are an almost impossible barrier to cross. An otter that lives in a river flowing east towards the Amazon cannot simply decide to climb over snowy peaks that are thousands of meters high to visit a river on the other side. This powerful geological feature has acted as a great divider for millions of years. As the Andes rose, they split the continent's ecosystems in two. Animal and plant populations that were once connected found themselves permanently separated. On the eastern side, life adapted to the vast humid Amazon basin. On the western side, life adapted to the drier coastal climates and the steep, fast-flowing rivers that drain into the Pacific. This process, where a physical barrier divides a species and allows them to evolve differently, is called vicariance. The Andes are a perfect and dramatic example of this natural force at work. Imagine the ancestors of today's otters living across the continent long before the Andes reached their current height. As the mountains grew, they isolated groups of otters from one another. The eastern group and the western group could no longer meet, mingle, or have offspring together. For countless generations, they lived in complete separation. Over this vast expanse of time, small changes began to accumulate in their DNA. Each population adapted to its own unique environment. Different food sources, different climates, and different types of rivers. These small changes added up, generation after generation. Eventually, after thousands or even millions of years, the two groups became so genetically different that they could no longer be considered the same species. Even if the mountain barrier were to disappear tomorrow, they would remain distinct. They have their own unique genetic identities, their own evolutionary histories. The Andes Mountains, therefore, did not just separate the otters, they created them. This magnificent natural wall served as the sculptor's tool, carving one ancestral species into two. it is a powerful reminder of how the Earth's geology shapes the diversity of life we see today. This remarkable discovery of the Pacific otter would not have been possible just a few decades ago. It really highlights the incredible power of modern scientific techniques and, the new windows they open onto the natural world. In the past, scientists classified species based almost entirely on what they could see. They would study an animal's physical characteristics, its size, the shape of its skull, the color of its fur, and the structure of its teeth. This field, called morphology, was the gold standard for identifying species for hundreds of years. It gave us our foundational understanding of the tree of life. Using this traditional method, the neotropical otters all seemed similar enough to be one species. While there were slight variations, none were dramatic enough to suggest they were entirely different kinds of animals. The skulls of otters from the Pacific coast were very similar to those from the Atlantic side. Their bodies were roughly the same size and shape. Without a more powerful tool, the secret of the two species would have remained hidden. This is where the revolution in genetics changed everything. The ability to read DNA gave scientists a completely new way to ask questions about the relationships between living things. DNA analysis allows scientists to look beyond the surface and see the evolutionary history of an animal written in its genetic code. By comparing the DNA sequences of different individuals, they can measure exactly how related they are. It's kind of like being able to read two family history books and see precisely where the family trees split apart. In the case of the otters, the genetic data was unambiguous. It showed a clear and ancient split between the populations on either side of the Andes. This genetic evidence was the smoking gun that proved they were two distinct species. This story is a wonderful example of how science is always moving forward. New technologies do not necessarily prove old methods wrong. Instead, they add new layers of detail and reveal things we could never have seen before. Today, scientists often use a combination of both morphology and genetics to get the most complete picture possible. They study the physical body and the genetic code together. This integrated approach is incredibly powerful, helping us to uncover the hidden diversity of life on our planet, from tiny insects to our beloved and charismatic otters. You might wonder why it is so important to give this new otter a separate name. After all, it is still an otter and it looks very much like its cousin. But in the world of conservation, a name is everything. When an animal has a distinct species name, it becomes a distinct entity in the eyes of the law, governments, and conservation organizations. It can be officially listed as endangered, threatened, or vulnerable. This official status is the first and most critical step towards creating specific laws and action plans to protect it from extinction. Before this discovery, we thought we were protecting one single very widespread species, the neotropical otter. Because its range was so large, from Mexico to Argentina, it was not considered to be an immediate critical danger across its entire habitat. Conservation efforts were spread thinly across this vast area, but now we know there are two species and the picture changes dramatically. The newly named Pacific otter, Lontra annectens, has a much smaller and more fragmented habitat along the narrow Pacific coast. A smaller habitat often means a smaller population and a much greater risk. By recognizing the Pacific otter as its own species, we can now assess its specific situation. Scientists can begin to count how many of them are left and identify the unique threats they face. Perhaps their rivers are more polluted or their habitat is being lost more quickly to coastal development. With a separate name, conservation groups can raise money specifically for the Pacific otter. They can create targeted programs to protect the specific rivers where it lives and work with local communities to reduce human-otter conflict. It is no longer just one of many neotropical otters, it is a unique species that needs its own dedicated survival plan. Think of it like this. If a doctor is treating a large family for a common cold, the approach is general. But if the doctor discovers that one family member actually has a much more serious and rare illness, the treatment plan changes immediately. That person needs special attention and specific medicine. Naming the Pacific otter is like giving it that correct diagnosis. It allows us to see its unique vulnerability and give it the focused care and protection it needs to survive for generations to come. A name is not just a label, it is a lifeline. The discovery of the Pacific otter sends ripples through many fields of knowledge. The most immediate change will be in the books and guides that nature lovers and scientists use. Every encyclopedia of mammals, every field guide to the animals of South America, and every online database will need to be updated. Where they once showed a single map for Lontra longicaulis, they will now need to show two separate maps, one for each species. The descriptions will need to be rewritten to reflect the new understanding of their distinct identities and habitats. This is the slow but steady work of science, correcting and refining our knowledge as we learn more. This change also affects zoos, wildlife reserves, and breeding programs around the world. A zoo that has a neotropical otter in its care will now need to know which species it actually is. They may need to conduct genetic tests on their animals to find out if they are holding a Lontra longicaulis from the Amazon or a Lontra annectens from the Pacific coast. This is vitally important for any captive breeding programs. To help preserve genetic diversity, it is crucial not to breed the two different species together. Each species must be managed as a separate population to maintain its unique genetic heritage. Furthermore, the discovery will inspire new research. Scientists will now be filled with new questions to answer. Are there subtle differences in behavior between the two species? Do they hunt for different kinds of food? Do they make different sounds to communicate with each other? Researchers can now travel to the Pacific coast with a new purpose, to study Lontra annectens and learn everything they can about what makes it unique. This will lead to a wealth of new scientific papers and a much richer, more detailed understanding of the lives of these animals. Even our understanding of South American history is touched by this. The timing of the split between the two otter species can tell scientists more about the geological history of the Andes Mountains. By studying the genetic clock in the otter's DNA, they can estimate when the two populations were separated. This biological data can then be compared with geological data about when the mountains rose. It is a beautiful example of how studying living creatures can give us clues about the ancient history of the Earth itself, connecting the small story of an otter to the grand story of a continent. With the knowledge that two separate otter species exist, conservationists can now build much smarter and more effective protection plans. The old one-size-fits-all approach is no longer valid. Instead, they can develop tailored strategies that address the specific needs and threats of each species. For the widespread neotropical otter, Lontra longicaulis, conservation efforts might continue to focus on large-scale issues like deforestation in the Amazon and water pollution from mining and agriculture across the vast eastern part of the continent. The goal is to protect the huge, interconnected river systems they call home. For the newly recognized Pacific otter, Lontra annectens, the strategy will be very different. Its habitat is a narrow, fragile corridor along the coast, which is often heavily populated by humans. The main threats here are likely to be more localized and intense. These could include habitat loss due to the expansion of cities and farms, pollution from coastal industries, and depletion of their food sources by overfishing. Conservation plans for the Pacific otter will need to be highly focused, working on a river-by-river basis to secure safe havens for the remaining populations. This new understanding allows conservation groups to allocate their resources more wisely. Instead of spreading their budget thinly across the entire continent, they can now direct specific funds towards projects dedicated solely to the Pacific otter. This might involve creating protected river corridors, working with local landowners to promote otter-friendly farming practices, or launching public awareness campaigns in coastal communities. By focusing their efforts, they have a much better chance of making a real lasting impact and ensuring the survival of this more vulnerable species. The discovery empowers them to act with precision. Ultimately, this is a story of hope. It shows that even in the face of environmental challenges, new knowledge gives us new tools to make a difference. The discovery of Lontra annectens is not bad news. It is a call to action. It is an opportunity to step in and protect a unique piece of our planet's biodiversity before it is too late. By understanding the true diversity of life, we are better equipped to be its guardians. The future of the Pacific otter is now brighter, simply because we now know its name and we can create a plan just for it. The discovery of the Pacific otter does more than just teach us about otters. It reminds us of a profound and wonderful truth. Our planet is still full of secrets waiting to be found. In an age where we have mapped every corner of the globe and satellites watch us from above, it is easy to think that the age of discovery is over. We can feel as though we know everything there is to know about the natural world. But then, a story like this comes along and reawakens our sense of wonder. It shows us that even in a group of well-known and much-loved animals, there can be hidden diversity. This is not an isolated event. Every year, scientists discover and name thousands of new species. Most of these are small insects, deep-sea creatures, or tiny fungi. But sometimes they are mammals, birds, and other animals we thought we knew so well. These discoveries are made in the deepest jungles, on the highest mountains, and sometimes, as with the otter, in the genetic code of creatures that have been in plain sight all along. It proves that the book of life is far from finished. There are still many chapters left to write and many amazing characters yet to be introduced. This constant unfolding of knowledge is deeply important for all of us. It keeps our curiosity alive and encourages us to look at the world with fresh eyes. It teaches our children that there is always more to learn and that the work of exploration is never truly done. Each new species discovered is like finding a new masterpiece of art. It adds to the richness and beauty of the world and deepens our appreciation for the intricate processes of evolution that have created such incredible variety. It gives us a reason to look closer and to care more deeply about the natural world. And so, the story of the two otters is a gift. It is a happy reminder that nature is more complex and more surprising than we can imagine. It inspires us to continue exploring, to continue questioning, and to continue protecting the habitats where future discoveries are waiting. There are other species, other secrets hidden in the forests, rivers, and mountains of our world. By caring for our planet, we are not just protecting what we know, we are also protecting all the wonderful things we have yet to discover. The world is and always will be a place of endless wonder.